The next morning, Taemin woke up early. He couldn't stop thinking about what had happened with his tablet. He decided to find Dr. Cubin, another human researcher who had been on the station for 6 months. If anyone would have answers, it would be him. Dr. Cubin worked in the cultural studies section on the other side of the station. Taemin had to take 3 different transport tubes to get there. The journey gave him time to notice something he had missed before. When other beings saw him coming, they would step aside or find reasons to go down different hallways. It was subtle, but it was there. The cultural studies section looked different from the military wing. The walls were covered with art and artifacts from different worlds. Music played softly from hidden speakers, changing styles every few minutes. As it cycled through different planetary cultures, Taemin found Dr. Cubin in a small office surrounded by books and datapads. He was a short, round man with thick glasses who always seemed to be smiling. "Taemin," Cubin said, looking up from his work, "I heard about your adventure yesterday. The whole station is talking about it." "That's what I wanted to ask you about," Taemin said, sitting in a chair across from Cubin's desk. "Why did everyone panic over a simple tablet?" Cubin's smile faded a little. "What exactly was on that tablet?" "Nothing special. Just basic military history. Pictures of old weapons, some tactical diagrams, battle maps from World War II. Things you could find in any museum on Earth." Cubin was quiet for a moment. He took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. "Taemin, I need to ask you something. Back on Earth, did anyone ever tell you not to share certain information when you came here?" "Well, yes. I have clearance restrictions for modern military secrets. But the stuff on my tablet was all historical. Public information." "I see." Cubin put his glasses back on. "And did anyone mention that there might be cultural sensitivities around human military topics?" "No. Why would there be?" Cubin leaned back in his chair. "Because, my friend, you've stumbled into something much bigger than you realize. The aliens' reaction to your tablet isn't unusual. It's standard procedure." "Standard procedure for what?" "For any exposure to human military technology or doctrine, even historical stuff." Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about?" Cubin stood up and walked to his office door. He looked out into the hallway, then closed and locked the door. "I've been studying galactic cultures for 6 months," he said quietly. "I've been trying to understand why humans are treated differently from other species. What I found out is troubling." He went to his computer and started typing. "There's an unwritten rule throughout the galaxy. It's never officially stated, but it's followed by every major civilization." He turned the screen so Taemin could see it. "Never attempt to reverse engineer or study human military technology." The screen showed a database search result. Hundreds of research proposals, all marked with the same status. "Denied. Cultural sensitivity protocols." "I don't understand," Taemin said. "Look at the dates," Cubin said, pointing at the screen. "These proposals go back to when humans first made contact with galactic civilization. Every single research request involving human military subjects has been denied. Every funding application has been rejected. Every academic paper has been blocked from publication." Taemin scrolled through the list. There were proposals from some of the most prestigious institutions in the galaxy, universities that had existed for thousands of years, research centers that studied the most advanced technologies known to science. All of them had tried to study human warfare, and all of them had been told no. "But why?" Taemin asked. "That's what I've been trying to find out." Cubin opened another file. "I've found fragments of old incident reports. Most of the details are classified, but I can piece together some of what happened. The first report was from something called the Zephyrian Deep Analysis Project. Most of the text was blocked out, but Taemin could see a few phrases. Psychological, trauma, recommend immediate termination of study, and subjects unable to return to normal duties. This was a team that tried to analyze a human assault rifle, Cubin explained. Something went wrong. The entire research team had to be hospitalized. The next report was from the Nexarian Empire. Again, most of it was classified, But the visible parts were even more disturbing. Catastrophic breakdown in reasoning, facility contamination, and recommend complete memory wipe for affected personnel. What were they studying? Taemin asked. Naval warfare tactics from Earth's Pacific Theater. Apparently, they couldn't handle the psychological impact of human strategic thinking. Bin showed him more fragments. A research station that had been abandoned after studying human tank designs. A military academy that had closed its doors after inviting a human instructor to teach basic infantry tactics. An entire think tank that had been disbanded after analyzing human siege warfare. "This is insane," Taemin said. "These are some of the most advanced minds in the galaxy. How could studying human military history cause this kind of damage?" "I don't know," Bin admitted. "But there's more." He pulled up what looked like an official government document. Most of it was in alien languages, but the translation software was able to handle some of it. "This is from the Galactic Security Council," Bin said. "It's a classification system for dangerous technologies. Look where human military doctrine appears on the list." Taemin read the screen. Human weapons and tactics were classified at the same level as universe-destroying superweapons and reality-altering devices. They were listed under a category called Existential Cognitive Hazards. "Cognitive hazards?" Taemin asked. "Ideas or information that are dangerous just to know about," Bin explained. "The theory is that some concepts are so alien or destructive that exposure to them can damage a mind permanently." They spent the next hour going through more files. The pattern was always the same. Any attempt to study human military technology ended in disaster. Not physical disaster, but mental and psychological breakdown among the researchers. "There's something else," Bin said. "I've been talking to other humans on the station. Jin-A, Dr. Wansik from the engineering section, Professor Eun-jung from physics. None of them have experienced what you're going through." "What do you mean?" "They work with alien colleagues all the time. They share human technology and knowledge, freely. But none of them work in military-related fields. The moment you mention anything related to warfare, the aliens shut down." Taemin thought about this. "So it's not that they're afraid of humans in general. They're specifically afraid of how we think about war." "Exactly." That afternoon, Taemin decided to test this theory. He went to the station's main library and tried to access academic papers about human subjects. He had no trouble finding studies about human biology, human culture, human art, even human psychology. But when he searched for anything related to human military history or warfare, he found nothing. Not just a few results. Nothing at all. It was as if that entire field of study didn't exist in the galactic academic community. He tried a different approach. He searched for papers about warfare in general, then looked to see if any mentioned humans. He found thousands of studies about alien conflicts, battle tactics from 100 different worlds, analyses of weapons from across the galaxy. But in all of that research, humans were never mentioned. Not once. It was as if the entire galactic academic community had agreed to pretend that humans had never fought a war. That evening, Taemin met with Jin-A for dinner again. This time he asked her directly about her experiences on the station. "Have you ever had problems sharing human technology with alien researchers?" he asked. "No, never," she said. "In fact, they love learning about human biology and medicine. I've published 3 papers with alien co-authors in the past 6 months. What about engineering technology? Computers, vehicles, that sort of thing?" "Dr. Wansik works with alien engineers all the time. They're fascinated by human approaches to problem solving. They say we think about things in ways they never considered." "But has anyone ever asked you about weapons or military technology?" Jin-A paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Actually, no. Now that you mention it, that's the one topic that never comes up. I just assumed they weren't interested. Or they were told not to ask." After dinner, Taemin went back to his room and tried to contact his colleagues on Earth. The communication system on the station allowed real-time conversations across interstellar distances, but there was a delay of several hours due to the distance. He sent a message to his department head at Seoul University. Need information about restrictions on sharing military history with alien researchers. Was anything classified that I should know about? The response came back 8 hours later. No special restrictions on historical material. Why do you ask? Having problems? Taemin sent another message. Alien researchers seem afraid to study human military subjects. Any idea why? This time the response took 12 hours. That's classified. Contact the Defense Ministry when you return to Earth. Classified. His own research was apparently classified at levels he didn't even know existed. The next day, Dr. Velnara approached him in the hallway. The crystalline being's light patterns were dim and nervous. Taemin spent the next 3 days reading through classified files in the restricted archive. Dr. Velnara had given him access to everything, and what he found made him understand why the galaxy was so afraid of his species. The files contained detailed reports from every major attempt to study human warfare. Each one ended the same way: complete failure and psychological trauma for the researchers involved. The first case study was from the Etherian Scientific Collective. The Etherians were beings of pure energy who had existed for millions of years. Their minds worked faster than any biological brain, and they could process information that would overwhelm other species. A team of 12 Etherian researchers had decided to analyze a simple human combat knife that had been recovered from the New Busan battlefield. They thought it would be easy. After all, it was just a piece of metal shaped into a blade. The research report was written in the cold, clinical language that scientists used, but Taemin could read the growing horror between the lines. Day 1. Initial examination reveals a simple edged weapon of basic construction. Steel blade, polymer handle, standard military specifications. Analysis proceeding normally. Day 2. Deeper investigation shows unusual design philosophy. Every aspect of the weapon has been optimized not just for cutting, but for psychological impact. The blade shape is designed to cause maximum fear in opponents. The balance is calculated to allow use as both weapon and tool. The handle texture is designed to maintain grip even when covered in blood. Day 3. Team experiencing unexpected difficulty maintaining objectivity. The weapon's design implies a mindset that sees violence as a technical problem with measurable solutions. Every design choice reflects deep understanding of both material science and psychology. This is not just a weapon. It is the physical embodiment of a philosophy of violence. Day 4. Research team requesting psychological support. Lead researcher. Unable to stop analyzing everyday objects as potential weapons. Kitchen utensils, furniture, even writing implements are being evaluated for combat effectiveness. This appears to be a side effect of extended exposure to human military thinking. Day 5. Project terminated. Lead researcher hospitalized after attempting to optimize her own body for combat efficiency. Remaining team members showing signs of severe psychological disturbance. All materials sealed and classified at the highest levels. The final note in the file was written by a different researcher. We looked into the mind that created this weapon. It looked back. Recommend that all human military artifacts be treated as hazardous materials. Taemin read through similar reports from dozens of other research projects. Each one followed the same pattern. Advanced alien minds trying to understand human warfare, only to discover that the very act of thinking like a human about conflict was dangerous to their mental health. The Altarian War College incident was particularly disturbing. The Altarians were considered the finest military strategists in the galaxy. They had studied warfare for thousands of years and had developed theories of combat that were used by every major military force. When Colonel Heejin arrived to give a lecture on human small unit tactics, the Altarians expected to learn a few new techniques that they could add to their existing knowledge. Instead, they were exposed to a completely different way of thinking about warfare. The lecture transcript made for chilling reading. Colonel Heejin. Before we begin, I need to explain how humans think about combat. We don't see it as a game with rules. We don't see it as a test of honor or courage. We see it as a problem to be solved using any available resources. Altarian Professor. Of course, all civilized species approach warfare scientifically. Colonel. Heejin. No, I don't think you understand. When I say any available resources, I mean everything. The environment becomes a weapon. The enemy's psychology becomes a weapon. Their own equipment becomes a weapon. Their culture, their biology, their fears. Everything becomes part of our arsenal. Altarian Professor. That seems excessive. Colonel. Hi, Jin. Let me give you a simple example. Your standard infantry squad has 12 soldiers with energy rifles. They're well-trained and disciplined. They've taken defensive positions in a building. How would Altarian tactics handle this situation? Altarian Professor. Frontal assault with superior numbers or siege tactics to force surrender. Colonel Hyojin. Those are options. But humans would first analyze the enemy's psychology. Altarians value honor and discipline. You follow rules of engagement. You protect your wounded. You respect surrendering enemies. All of those admirable qualities become weaknesses that we can exploit. The transcript showed that the Altarian professors became increasingly uncomfortable as the lecture continued. Colonel Hyojin wasn't just teaching tactics. She was teaching them to think like predators. Colonel Hyojin. We would study your building materials and create weapons from them. We would analyze your communication patterns and jam them in ways that cause maximum confusion. We would use your own moral code against you by making you choose between following orders and protecting civilians. Altarian Professor. This is not warfare, this is systematic cruelty. Colonel Hyojin. No, Professor. This is how you win wars. Everything else is just playing soldier. 3 professors suffered nervous breakdowns before the lecture was finished. The college dean wrote in his resignation letter, I have studied warfare for 600 years. I thought I understood violence. The humans have shown me that I understand nothing. They don't fight wars. They conduct orchestrated violence with the precision of art and the ruthlessness of nature itself. But the most frightening case was the Nexarian Empire's attempt to create hybrid military technology. The Nexarians were master engineers who had built some of the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. They thought they could combine their superior materials and power sources with human weapon designs to create the ultimate military hardware. The project files showed how quickly things went wrong. The Nexarian engineers started by analyzing human projectile weapons. They were puzzled by the primitive chemical propulsion system, when much more efficient energy weapons existed. But as they studied the designs more carefully, they began to understand the underlying philosophy. Chief Engineer Vextal. The humans didn't choose chemical projectiles because they were the best available technology. They chose them because they were reliable, cheap to manufacture, and could be produced using resources available on any battlefield. This isn't primitive technology. This is deliberately simple technology. The engineers realized that human weapons weren't designed to be the most advanced possible. They were designed to be the most practical. Every design choice was made with the assumption that the weapon would need to work in the worst possible conditions, be repaired with basic tools, and be manufactured by people who might not have access to advanced facilities. Research Assistant Morden. We're not looking at weapons. We're looking at tools designed by a species that assumes warfare is a normal part of existence. These aren't special military items. These are everyday objects optimized for killing. The psychological impact on the research team was severe. As they continued studying human designs, they began to see the universe the way humans did. Every material became a potential weapon component. Every manufacturing process became a way to build military equipment. Every technological advancement was evaluated for its warfighting applications. The project was terminated when Chief Engineer Vextal submitted a proposal to redesign the Nexarian civilian infrastructure to support military production. He had been so influenced by human military thinking that he could no longer separate civilian and military technology. His final report was 2 sentences long. Humans don't build weapons. They build a civilization that can become a weapon at any moment. We cannot match this without becoming something we no longer recognize. Taman found dozens of similar cases. Every attempt to study human warfare ended in failure and psychological damage. The alien researchers weren't just learning new techniques. They were being infected by a fundamentally different way of thinking about existence itself. The most disturbing discovery was a secret meeting of galactic leaders that had taken place just 1 year after the Battle of New Busan. Representatives from every major civilization had gathered to discuss what they called the human problem. The meeting transcripts were classified at the highest levels, but Velnara had somehow gained access to them. Galactic Council Chairman: "We face an unprecedented situation. Humanity represents a form of consciousness that may be incompatible with galactic civilization." Zephyrian Ambassador: "Our analysis teams have suffered permanent psychological damage from minimal exposure to human military thinking. We cannot study them without risking contamination of our own minds." Altarian Military Advisor: "They don't just fight differently, they think differently, about everything. They see potential for violence and advantage in situations where we see only normal interactions." Etherian Representative: "The question before us is simple. Are humans too dangerous to coexist with galactic civilization?" The debate continued for days. Some delegates wanted to quarantine humanity on Earth. Others suggested military action to prevent humans from spreading through the galaxy. The space station floated quietly in the dark between the stars. It was huge, bigger than most cities on Earth. Dr. Taman pressed his face against the window of the transport ship and watched it grow larger as they got closer. The station looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space. Lights blinked along its surface like tiny stars. "First time seeing the Galactic Research Station?" asked the pilot, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. His voice came through the translator device. On Taman's ear. "Yes," Taman said. "It's amazing." The pilot made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. "Wait until you see the inside. Beings from 12 different worlds work there, all the smartest minds in the galaxy." Taman nodded. He was excited and nervous at the same time. He was the first human to be invited to study at the station. Back on Earth, he taught military history at Seoul University. He knew everything about human wars and weapons. Now he would learn about alien wars and weapons too. The transport ship docked with the station with a soft bump. Tae-min grabbed his bag and followed the pilot through the airlock. The inside of the station was even more amazing than the outside. The halls were wide and tall. Strange plants grew along the walls. The air smelled clean with a hint of something sweet. Beings of all shapes and sizes walked through the halls. Some looked almost human but with different colored skin. Others were completely alien. Tae-min saw a creature that looked like a walking tree. Another one floated in the air like a jellyfish made of light. "Dr. Tae-min," a voice called his name. He turned and saw a tall woman with pale skin and silver hair walking toward him. She was human, which made him feel better. "I'm Dr. Jin-ae," she said, shaking his hand. "I work in the biology section. I'm here to show you around." Jin-ae led him through the station. She pointed out different sections. The physics lab was behind walls that looked like they were made of crystal. The chemistry section had warning, signs in 20 different languages. The computer center hummed with machines that Tae-min didn't recognize. "Your lab is in the military studies wing," Jin-ae said as they walked. "You'll be working with some very famous researchers." They stopped. At a door marked with symbols Tae-min couldn't read. Jin-ae pressed her hand on a panel and the door slid open. Inside was a laboratory filled with strange machines and displays. 3 aliens were working at different tables. "Everyone, this is Dr. Tae-min from Earth," Jin-ae announced. The first alien to approach looked like a person made of living glass. She was see-through and light moved through her body in pretty patterns. "I am Dr. Velnara," she said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "I study weapon systems." The second alien was tall and thin with green skin and large black eyes. "Commander, Thrix," he said with a bow. "I analyze military tactics." The third alien looked like a giant insect walking on 2 legs. His name was Professor Zektar, and he specialized in armor design. "I'm very excited to be here," Taemin said. I brought some files about human military technology. Maybe we can work together and learn from each other. The three aliens looked at each other. Dr. Velnara's light patterns flickered in a way that seemed nervous. Commander Thrix took a small step backward. Professor Zektar's antenna twitched. That's very kind of you, Dr. Velnara said slowly. But perhaps we should start with our current projects first. We can discuss human technology later. Taemin felt confused but nodded. Of course, what are you working on now? Dr. Velnara showed him a hologram of an energy weapon. It looked like a rifle but made of blue metal with glowing parts. This is a plasma rifle from the Andorian Empire. It can fire bursts of superheated gas. Interesting, Taemin said. Humans have tried to make plasma weapons too, but we found that projectile weapons are often more reliable. Would you like to see our designs? The hologram flickered and disappeared. Dr. Velnara's body became almost completely transparent. Oh, that won't be necessary. I'm sure human weapons are adequate for your needs. Commander Thrix quickly changed the subject. He showed Taemin a battle simulation on a large screen. Tiny ships moved around a 3D map of space. We're studying the Kethvar victory at the Battle of Seven Suns, he explained. Taemin watched the simulation with interest. The alien tactics were clever but seemed overly complicated. On Earth, we have a saying, he said. The simplest plan is usually the best plan. In World War II, human generals often won battles by doing the unexpected thing, not the complicated thing. Commander Thrix stopped the simulation. His large eyes blinked rapidly. Human, World War II? You number your wars? Well, yes. We've had many wars throughout history. Would you like me to show you some of our tactical studies? I have files about tank battles, naval warfare, air combat. No, Commander Thrix said quickly, then caught himself. I mean, that won't be needed today. Perhaps another time. Taemin spent the rest of the day getting settled in his room and exploring the station. Everywhere he went, he tried to make friends with the alien researchers. He offered to share human knowledge and asked about their work. But every time he mentioned human weapons or warfare, the same thing happened. The aliens would become uncomfortable and change the subject. At dinner, he sat with Janae in the station's dining hall. The room was full of beings eating foods from their home worlds. The air was filled with strange smells and the sound of many different languages. How was your first day? Janae asked, eating something that looked like blue pasta. Strange, Taemin said. Every time I try to talk about human military technology, everyone gets nervous. I thought they would be interested in learning about different approaches to warfare. Janae frowned. That is odd. Usually researchers here love to compare notes from different worlds. Maybe they're just shy about working with humans? We're still pretty new to the galactic community. Maybe, Taemin said, but he wasn't convinced. The next morning, Taemin decided to try a different approach. Instead of talking about weapons, he would show them. He loaded some basic human weapon designs onto his tablet. Nothing too advanced or secret, just simple things like rifles and tanks that any human could find in a history book. He left the tablet in the common area of the military studies lab and went to get coffee. When he came back 10 minutes later, the lab was empty. Not just empty of people, but completely abandoned. Papers were scattered on the floor. Chairs were knocked over. One workstation was still running, but no one was there. Hello? Taemin called out. No answer. He walked into the hallway and saw a group of beings in white protective suits walking toward the lab. They carried special tools and moved carefully, like they were handling something dangerous. Excuse me, Taemin said to one of them. What's happening? The being's voice was muffled by his protective mask. Hazardous material cleanup, please stay back. Hazardous material? But I was just in there. There's nothing dangerous. The being in the white suit looked at him through a clear face shield. Are you the human who left the electronic device in Section 7? You mean my tablet? It just has some history files on it. The being made a note on a handheld device. The device has been secured. You will need to speak with station security about proper protocols for dangerous materials. Dangerous materials? It's just a tablet with some old pictures and documents. But the being had already walked away. The whole cleanup team entered the lab and sealed the door behind them. A red warning light started flashing above the entrance. Taemin stood in the empty hallway, feeling more confused than ever. His simple tablet with basic human military history was being treated like a bomb. The most advanced minds in the galaxy had run away from pictures of old Earth tanks and rifles. He thought about what Jinne had said. Maybe the aliens were just being careful because humans were new. But this seemed like more than caution. This seemed like fear. As he walked back to his room, Taemin noticed that other beings in the hallway looked at him differently now. They still nodded politely when they saw him, but they also stepped a little further away. Word was spreading through the station that the human had brought something dangerous. That night, Taemin lay in his bed looking out at the stars through his room's small window. He had come to the station excited to learn and share knowledge. Instead, he had discovered that his very presence made others nervous. The tablet incident had shown him that even the most basic human military technology was seen as a threat. But why? What did these advanced alien civilizations know about humans that he didn't? And why were they so afraid to study human ways of war? Taemin decided that he needed to find answers. Something was going on, something bigger than just nervousness, about new species. The aliens weren't just avoiding human military technology. They were actively afraid of it, and he was going to find out why. Dr. Velnara led Taemin through parts of the station he had never seen before. They took a service elevator down to the lowest levels, where the walls were thicker and the lighting was dim. The air felt different here, heavier somehow. Where are we going? Taemin asked. To the restricted archives, Velnara said. Her crystalline form was glowing more brightly now, as if she was nervous. There are things stored here that most beings in the galaxy are not allowed to see. They walked down a long corridor lined with doors marked with warning symbols. At the end of the hall was a massive vault door that looked like it could withstand a nuclear explosion. Velnara pressed her hand against a scanner and spoke something in her own language. The door opened with a heavy grinding sound. Inside was a small room filled with data storage devices and viewing screens. Everything looked old and dusty, as if it hadn't been used in years. This is where we keep the classified records from first contact, Velnara said. The real records, not the sanitized versions that are taught in schools. She activated one of the viewing screens. It flickered to life, showing the symbol of the Galactic Historical Archive. When your species first achieved faster-than-light travel, we thought you were just another young civilization, Velnara explained. Primitive technology, simple culture, nothing special. We were wrong. The screen showed an image of Earth as seen from space, then pictures of early human spacecraft. They looked crude compared to alien technology, like metal cans with engines strapped to them. The first human colony ship reached the Kepler system about 40 years ago, Velnara continued. A small settlement on a planet you called New Busan, about 50,000 humans, mostly farmers and researchers. The screen showed pictures of the colony. Simple buildings, green fields, humans working in gardens and laboratories. It looked peaceful and harmless. At that time, the Mordak Empire controlled that sector of space, Velnara said. They are a warrior species. Very aggressive, very confident in their military superiority. They had conquered dozens of worlds. The screen changed to show the Mordak. They looked like huge armored reptiles walking on two legs. Their ships were dark and angular, covered with weapons. The Mordak decided to test humanity's defenses, Velnara said. They thought it would be easy. A primitive species with simple weapons would surrender quickly when faced with advanced technology. Taemin felt his stomach tighten. What happened? They attacked New Busan with a full invasion fleet, Velnara said. 300 ships, 50,000 soldiers, the most advanced weapons in their arsenal. They expected the battle to last, maybe a few hours. The screen showed recordings from the Mordak fleet, sleek alien warships dropping through the atmosphere of New Busan, energy weapons lighting up the sky. The human colony looked defenseless. At first, it went exactly as the Mordak expected. Velnara continued. Human weapons were primitive. Their ships were destroyed quickly. Their defensive positions were overrun. Within 6 hours, the Mordak controlled most of the planet. The recordings showed Mordak soldiers advancing through human settlements. The aliens were clearly winning. But then something changed, Velnara said, and her light patterns flickered with what Taemin was beginning to recognize as fear. The humans didn't surrender. They didn't run. Instead, they started to adapt. The screen showed new recordings. Human fighters were using captured Mordak weapons, but they had modified them somehow. The energy beams were brighter, more focused. Within hours, your people had figured out how to improve Mordak technology, Velnara said. They took weapons that had taken the Mordak centuries to develop and made them better in a single day. That's impossible, Taemin said. That's what the Mordak thought too, Velnara replied. But it gets worse. The recordings now showed human fighters using tactics that made no sense. They would attack Mordak positions that seemed impossible to capture, using strategies that looked like suicide missions, but somehow they were winning. Your Colonel Sung Ho was in command of the human forces, Velnara said. Watch what he did. The screen showed a tactical display of the battle. The Mordak had surrounded a human city, cutting off all supply lines. It should have been over. But instead of surrendering, the humans started doing something the Mordak couldn't understand. They turned their own city into a weapon, Velnara said quietly. Every building, every street, every piece of infrastructure became part of a trap. The Mordak thought they were conquering a city. Instead, they were walking into the most sophisticated killing machine ever created. The recordings showed Mordak soldiers moving through empty human streets. Then suddenly the streets themselves were exploding. Buildings collapsed in precise patterns. Underground tunnels that the Mordak hadn't known existed were flooding with poison gas. But that's not the worst part, Velnara said. The worst part is what your people did to their minds. Their minds? Psychological warfare, Velnara said. But not like anything we had ever seen before. The humans didn't just want to defeat the Mordak. They wanted to break them. The screen showed intercepted Mordak communications. Even through the translation software, Taemin could hear the fear and confusion in their voices. The humans started broadcasting messages on Mordak communication channels, Velnara explained. But these weren't threats or demands for surrender. They were something else. A recording began to play. It was a human voice speaking in the Mordak language. The words were simple, almost friendly. Hello, Mordak warriors. We know you're scared. We know you're far from home. We know you're starting to realize that this isn't the easy victory you expected. The voice paused, then continued. We want you to know that we're not angry with you. You're just following orders. But we also want you to know that we've been studying you. We know how you think. We know what you're afraid of. And we're going to use that knowledge. That was just the beginning, Velnara said. Over the next 3 days, the humans completely dismantled the Mordak's ability to function as a military force. Not just their weapons or ships, but their will to fight. The screen showed more recordings. Mordak soldiers abandoning their positions. Officers refusing to give orders. Entire units surrendering without being asked. How did they do it? Taemin asked. We still don't know, Velnara said. The humans somehow analyzed Mordak psychology, culture, and social structure in real time. Then they used that knowledge to create psychological attacks that were perfectly designed to break the Mordak mindset. The screen showed the final day of the battle. What was left of the Mordak fleet was retreating, but the humans weren't letting them go easily. Colonel Sung Ho sent a message to the fleeing Mordak ships, Velnara said. It was broadcast on all frequencies so everyone in the galaxy could hear it. A new recording played. This time it was a human male voice, speaking in perfect galactic standard. This is Colonel Sung Ho of the New Busan Defense Force. To any species listening to this broadcast, understand what has happened here. The Mordak came to our world with superior technology and greater numbers. They thought that would be enough. They were wrong. The voice was calm, almost casual. We didn't defeat them with better weapons. We defeated them by being better at war itself. We studied their technology and improved it. We analyzed their tactics and countered them. We examined their psychology and exploited it. There was a pause. To the Mordak survivors. Tell your people what you learned here. Tell them that humans don't just fight wars, we solve them, like puzzles. And we're very good at solving puzzles. The recording ended. The vault fell silent except for the humming of the machines. The surviving Mordak ships limped back to their home system, Velnara said. But the damage was already done. Word of what happened spread through the galaxy faster than light. What kind of word? That humans weren't just another warrior species, Velnara said. They were something new, something that approached warfare not as a test of strength or courage, but as a science to be mastered. The screen now showed reports from across the galaxy. Intelligence agencies, military planners, government leaders, all trying to understand what had happened at New Busan. Every major civilization started analyzing the battle records, Velnara continued. They wanted to understand human military capabilities so they could defend against them if necessary. And that's when the real nightmare began. Velnara activated another screen. This one showed medical reports and psychological evaluations. The first team to study the New Busan recordings was from the Etherian Collective, she said. Pure energy beings with intellects that span centuries. They thought they were prepared for anything. The medical reports were heavily redacted, but Taman could see enough to understand that something had gone very wrong. After 3 days of studying human tactics, the lead researcher suffered what we can only call a complete psychological breakdown, Velnara said. She kept repeating the same phrase over and over. They see warfare in everything. Every tool is a weapon. Every thought is a strategy. How do we fight something that thinks like that? The screen showed more reports. The Altarian War College had invited a human military advisor to give a lecture on basic infantry tactics. 3 professors had mental breakdowns during the presentation. After spending a week in the restricted archives, Timon knew he needed to speak with someone from Earth who understood the full situation. Dr. Velnara had given him a secure communication code that would connect him directly to the highest levels of human government. The call took 18 hours to connect due to the distance and security protocols. When the screen finally activated, Timon found himself looking at Admiral So-Young, Earth's representative to the Galactic Defense Council. Admiral So-Young was a small, elderly woman with sharp eyes and gray hair. She wore a simple military uniform with insignia that Timon didn't recognize. Behind her was an office that looked ordinary except for the star charts covering one wall. Dr. Timon, she said without any greeting. I've been expecting your call. How much do you know? Everything, Timon said. Dr. Velnara showed me the classified files. I know about New Busan. I know about the research projects that failed. I know about the secret treaty that got humanity accepted into galactic civilization. Admiral So-Young nodded. Good. That saves us time. What do you want to know? I want to know if Earth's government has known about this all along. Of course we've known, the Admiral said. We've been managing the situation for 40 years. Did you think humanity's rapid acceptance into galactic society was an accident? Taman felt a chill. You mean it was planned? Not planned. Managed. Admiral So-Young leaned back in her chair. When the Mordak attacked New Busan, we had 3 options. We could surrender and become a conquered species. We could fight back, using conventional tactics and probably lose. Or we could fight back using everything we had and hope we could make the galaxy too afraid to attack us again. So you chose fear. We chose survival, the Admiral corrected, and it worked better than we hoped. She activated a display screen that showed statistics and charts. Since the Battle of New Busan, humanity has not fought a single war. Not one. Do you know why? Because no one will fight us? Exactly. The galaxy's terror of human military capabilities has given us perfect peace. We achieved through fear what other species spend millennia trying to achieve through diplomacy. Taman studied the charts. They showed human expansion through the galaxy over the past 40 years. New colonies, trade routes, research stations, everything growing steadily without a single military conflict. But there's a cost. Admiral So Young continued. We're increasingly isolated. Other species work with us, trade with us, share scientific knowledge with us, but they also fear us. Every interaction is colored by the knowledge that we're too dangerous to fight, but also too dangerous to fully trust. She showed him more data. Human researchers were welcome at alien institutions, but they worked in separate sections. Human merchants received favorable trade deals, but they were often kept at arm's length. Human diplomats were treated with respect, but also with obvious nervousness. We're like a nuclear weapon sitting at the Galactic conference table, Admiral So Young explained. Everyone wants to keep us happy, but no one wants to get too close. Is that why I wasn't warned about the restrictions on military research? Taemin asked. Partly. We've found that humans work better with alien colleagues when they don't know about the fear factor. Dr. Jin'e, Dr. Won-sik, Professor Yoon-jung, they all have successful collaborations because they think they're just normal researchers doing normal work. But I'm different because I study military subjects. Yes. Your presence on that station was a test, actually. We wanted to see how the current generation of alien researchers would react to human military knowledge. The results were predictable. Admiral So Young activated another screen. This one showed surveillance footage from the research station. Taemin could see himself walking through the halls, talking with alien researchers, leaving his tablet in the laboratory. We've been monitoring everything, the Admiral said. The panic over your tablet, the emergency hazmat procedures, the way other researchers started avoiding you. It's all exactly what we expected based on 40 years of similar incidents. You were using me as an experiment? We were gathering intelligence. The galaxy's fear of human military thinking is our greatest strategic asset. We need to understand how that fear is evolving over time. Taemin felt anger rising in his chest. So my entire assignment was fake? I was never really supposed to learn about alien military technology? Oh, you were supposed to learn, Admiral So Young said. But not from willing teachers. We knew the aliens wouldn't share their military secrets directly. But fear makes people sloppy. Desperate to understand a threat, they sometimes reveal more than they intend to. She was right. In trying to explain why they couldn't study human warfare, the alien researchers had shown Taemin more classified information than any normal academic exchange would have provided. Dr. Velnara has given you access to files that most galactic leaders don't know exist, Admiral So Young pointed out. You now know more about alien military capabilities and weaknesses than any human in history, except for me and a few others. But at what cost? Taemin demanded. These beings are terrified of us. They see us as some kind of monsters. Are we monsters? Admiral So Young asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. Taemin thought about everything he had learned. The way humans approached warfare as a science to be perfected. The way they could turn any situation, any tool, any enemy strength into a weapon. The way they thought about violence not as a regrettable necessity, but as a problem to be solved with maximum efficiency. I don't know, he admitted. That's the right answer, Admiral So Young said. We are what we are. Evolution made us into supreme predators, and 10,000 years of civilization hasn't changed our fundamental nature. We're very good at violence, and we think about it in ways that terrify other species. She paused to let that sink in. But here's the thing. Our capacity for violence has given us peace. Not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. Do you know how many interstellar wars there have been since humanity joined galactic civilization? How many? None. 0. Complete galactic peace for 40 years. Before humanity arrived there was at least one major interstellar conflict every decade. Now when disputes arise between species, they get resolved through negotiation because nobody wants to risk the possibility that humans might get involved. The implications of this hit Taemin like a physical blow. We're the galaxy's police force. We're the galaxy's deterrent, Admiral So Young corrected. Everyone knows that if a war breaks out, humanity might choose sides, and nobody wants to fight a war knowing that humans could be involved. She showed him one final set of data. Galactic crime rates, territorial disputes, resource conflicts, even minor diplomatic incidents. All of them had dropped dramatically since humanity's arrival. The galaxy is more peaceful now than it has been in recorded history, Admiral So Young said. And all it cost was making everyone afraid of how we think. But we're alone, Taemin said. We're surrounded by species that can barely stand to be in the same room with us. Yes, that's the price of peace through fear. We achieved perfect security at the cost of perfect isolation. Admiral So Young leaned forward in her chair. Now I have a question for you, Dr. Taemin. After everything you've learned, what do you want to do? Taemin thought about it. He could request reassignment away from military studies. He could go back to Earth and pretend none of this had happened. He could try to work with alien researchers who would always see him as a potential threat. Or he could accept his role in humanity's larger strategy. I want to stay, he said finally. I want to continue my research. Even knowing that you'll be feared and isolated? Especially knowing that. Someone needs to monitor how the galaxy reacts to us. Someone needs to make sure that fear doesn't turn into something worse. Admiral So Young smiled for the first time during the conversation. Good answer. There's one more thing you should know. You're not the only human doing this kind of work. We have researchers, diplomats, and military advisors stationed throughout the galaxy, all of them serving as reminders of what humanity is capable of. Living deterrence. Exactly. By simply existing in alien spaces, by being polite but undeniably human, you help maintain the fear that keeps the peace. The communication ended, leaving Taemin alone in his room on the research station. He looked out at the stars and thought about his place in the universe. He was part of a species so good at warfare that other civilizations couldn't even safely study their methods, a species that had achieved peace not through wisdom or compassion, but through being too dangerous to fight. A species that maintained galactic stability by making everyone else afraid of what they might do. The next morning, Taemin returned to the Military Studies Laboratory. Dr. Velnara was there, her crystalline form dim with nervousness. Commander Thrix kept his distance, staying on the far side of the room. Professor Zektar had not come in at all. I want to continue my research, Taemin announced. I promise I won't share any human military files or demonstrate human tactical thinking. But I would like to learn about your methods of warfare. Dr. Velnara's light patterns flickered rapidly. That might be acceptable, as long as you understand that we cannot reciprocate. I understand, Taemin said. You're afraid of how I think about war.